Hello, founders. Welcome to Spark Labs by ARK Invest. I'm here with Kailah. We're going to have an amazing conversation. Kailah is one of our advisors in residence, affectionately known as the Air Supply. Kailah, we're going to be talking today about how to hire for every stage of a startup in the AI economy. Thank you so much for being so generous with your time and helping the members over at Spark Labs. Let's jump right in. Give us a quick thumbnail sketch of who you are and how you help founders.
Absolutely. So, hi, everybody. Really excited to be here with you today, Ed. My name is Kailah Matyas. I've spent my career working with founders, investors, and boards of high growth technology companies, specifically around their talent needs. So, from very early stage, helping them develop talent roadmaps to align to their product and tech roadmaps, thinking about building advisory boards and early hires into those organizations, all the way through to scale and growth up to 100 million, 200 million plus, and everything in between, recognizing you need different types of talent as you're building and scaling an organization, and really being able to identify those inflection points along the way where you need to bring in new hires, new individuals to help you scale and grow, as well as how do we create efficiencies for that scale and that growth as well.
Let's set the plate for how founders should approach this conversation. And the first thing I tell founders is that hiring for a startup, going after talent for a startup, totally different things, especially if you're raising money, you plan to raise VC, even if you're bootstrapping, very different on so many dimensions than, let's say, a small business, or a lot of individuals come from corporate recruiting or executive hiring practices, and it's just a completely different world. Set the table for us. What's the mental model? Like, what's the main difference between hiring and talent for a startup versus everybody else out there?
Yeah, there are a couple of key things. I mean, number one, the most important thing you need to think about is setting that talent roadmap and being able to align the business goals and understanding then what's the talent you're going to need to achieve those goals. And I think people misread either what type of talent they need to achieve those goals. Often they're over hiring too early on, giving people too much responsibility where there isn't responsibility there yet, giving inflated titles to individuals who don't have the experience to be able to take the business to the next level, maybe over hiring in the beginning around really strong subject matter experts who can't wear a lot of hats and sort of be that Swiss Army knife or that athlete early on, but then not evolving the business to support when you need to bring in specialists, when you need to bring in experts and subject matter experts to help you build, scale, and grow. And so recognizing that in the beginning, before you've really built much, you need people that are going to kind of help you figure things out, and
Sure.
having that right talent around the table to help you figure it out. And those that have the experience to help you do so is so critical. The other thing I notice is that as founders are out there having conversations with people, they have happy ears, right? People are like, that's a great idea. I'd love to be involved with your business. And they
Yeah.
bring them on board, right? And it's like, now what do I do with this person? They're not doing what they said they could do. They just said they really liked my
Uh,
product, what I want to build, right? And that becomes a real overhang for the business. And so one of the key things is really about backing up, really being proactive in your hiring and your talent strategy, not being reactive and quick to move. You really want to be thoughtful and intentional, and also really thinking about where you need expertise and where you need full-time support, part-time support, fractional support. And then obviously, I know we'll touch at some point around where AI can help really expedite some of these functions for organizations.
And it's nice to have access to someone like you because, especially early stage of a startup, you don't have the budget to go set up an HR department and bring someone in full time. So having someone like you who's pretty much seen it all and not dating us or calling us old, but you and I have talked, we're kind of OGs. We've been around since .com 1.0 and before that. So we've pretty much seen all the different cycles. I'm curious, right now, it is like mass pandemonium out there. There is such a shock that's happening with AI. We're seeing startups get rewarded for financially tightening, laying off staff. We're watching agentic AI and people say, oh, you don't need to hire people anymore. You can actually run your entire thing using AI agents. What is your general reaction to what's going on, and what would you tell us in terms of how we're processing this inflection point right now?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, it's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of disruption, but it's also really exciting. And I think, like we saw in other cycles of development and technology, the ability to expedite, speed things up in ways that are going to really help grow and develop innovation in the category. But I do think it is a little bit worrisome, certainly for people who work full time, and particularly at certain points of the sort of career inflection points, right? College graduates. It's a difficult time, there's no doubt, in terms of coming into the workforce now. And if you are not immersed and really well versed in how to use AI to create efficiencies for employers, they're not going to be interested in you, right? So
Right.
I think that's the really important thing. With that being said, I also think it's an incredibly exciting time for founders and entrepreneurs to really think about efficiencies and to use AI in ways that, perhaps in the past they did have to hire full-time or part-time professionals for, and they can really use them to create those efficiencies and that scale early on. I will say, though, I don't think that it fully replaces humans, right? I still believe that there is judgment, that there's, the ability to read and understand people and understand situations that these agents don't yet know and AI doesn't understand yet. And so I think they can work in partnership. And I know we'll talk a little bit about where you can leverage AI in each of the different stages that we're going to go through. But, from very early, there's efficiency. When we get towards Series A, B, and beyond, it's really about embedding AI
Mm,
into the workflows and what you're doing and
that's right.
ensuring that all of those team members are using it in their day to day, not just on an ad hoc kind of a basis.
100%. I've seen people try and stretch their dollars with AI, and it's worked up to a certain point in time. But when you strap AI like a productivity jetpack to the right person, and right now, there's a lot of talent out there because of these layoffs. I'm watching founders have access to people they wouldn't have access to before. You strap AI to them, they'll run circles, literally rocket ship fly circles around people who are just either don't use AI or people just rely solely on AI. And that's what I'd like to really cover as we have this ongoing conversation about how to hire for every stage of your startup, especially in this AI economy. We'll pepper in these thoughts. Let's start right from inception point. And to all you founders out there listening, if you are looking at, let's say, a series A or B, you can just skip right ahead. We'll put chapter markers and everything. We're going to go through the stages because it helps. And maybe you hear a few things in the early stages, if you're later, that might apply to you. But let's start off pre-seed founder. Let me set it up for you. Founder, maybe some co-founders, they have an idea, they get things going, MVP, and they either make money or they score a little bit of pre-seed investment. What have you seen in terms of what they should be thinking about in terms of hiring at that stage?
For sure. Well, one cautionary tale I will share. Yes, you have a lot of layoffs that are happening right now. There's a lot of talent out there, but not all of that talent is appropriate for an early stage company. And I
Very
want to
good.
caution our founders about that because I think they see big names, they see well-known companies on somebody's CV, resume, bio. The problem is those are individuals who are used to working in well-resourced, well-funded, well-structured organizations, and a pre-seed bootstrapped early funding staged company is the complete antithesis of that. And there's a lot of entrepreneurs and people who want to be a part of those early days, but you remove all the cushiness and all the resources that were once around them and put
Yes.
them in there, it is a total fish out of water. So I want to set that as the table. You can leverage those individuals as advisors because they may bring some great expertise from a subject matter standpoint, from an industry standpoint. They might be door openers for you.
Mm,
That's a great way to leverage them. But
perfect.
for somebody who's never been inside of a startup before, the last thing you want to do is take a chance. Hiring is risky, flat out. We want to mitigate that risk as much as possible, right? And
Absolutely.
so we
Yes.
want to find individuals that have been there and done that before. And if they've been part of that early stage, they went to a bigger company, okay. But you've got to caution that. So back to the original question, what I often see are those mistakes of overhiring early on, bringing on board people who are too senior, too experienced, don't have that level of scrappiness, and you don't necessarily need full-time hires in those very, very early days. Early days. This is all about flexibility, right? You want to be able to scale up, scale down quickly, pivot quickly, make decisions quickly. Being locked into a W-2 employee at that point is a big overhang on the business. I would much rather see individuals leveraging contractors, agencies, fractionals, advisors, whatever we want to talk about in that specific category. But that is really, really important. I also think that there's an opportunity here to leverage AI agents because of the fact that you can get scale quickly, you can get some efficiencies on a lot of the administrative tasks particularly around customer success as you're starting to get some traction there and needing some support there, maybe some early support around sales and developing, that pipeline. That's a really great area to be using AI.
So then it also affects investors if you're early stage and you do want to raise, let's say, a seed round. Investors are no longer interested in saying, okay, how much headcount, how many engineers do you need? And we're going to start funding this. I've had investors tell me right to my face, and I talked to a founder. They pitched me. I like the idea, like the team, like the traction. They need $5 million. And I asked them, what are they going to use it for? And it's hiring. And they said, we're not interested anymore because all the positions you said you're hiring for, we're watching agents and you don't want that risk, like you said. Then my question to you is, all right, I'm pre-seed early stage. Where do I go and find that great advisor or that fractional or that contractor? Because as you can imagine, a lot of choices out there and founders can get very confused. And you don't want to make that fatal mistake in hiring or contracting the wrong person right out of the gate.
Couple things. Number one, I think with contractors, you want to leverage your network. You want to reach out to fellow founders. If you're at Spark Labs, reach out to your peers in the community. This is part of why you're in the community. Reach out to me, reach out to Ed, right? You've got an incredible community of supporters that are going to help guide you in the right direction and give you recommended individuals that you then still need to ensure are going to be the right fit for you, but you're at least removing a little bit of that unknown and that risk factor. That's number one. That's particularly around consultants and fractionals, I would say.
For
When
sure.
it comes to advisors, advisors are going to be a little bit different because I really take the approach of what are you leveraging an advisor for? Is it subject matter expertise? Is it validity and credibility in a particular industry? And if that's the case, that's where you can go out and do some primary research and say, okay, I have followed this one company that did something similar. They've exited, they grew, they had, a great scale and growth. That founder may be doing something else now. Reaching out to them and saying, hey, I'm a founder, I'm building this, really interested in what you achieved with X, Y, and Z company. Would you be interested in having a conversation? And not necessarily broaching it from the get-go of, hey, you want to be an advisor, but using that as a chance to get to know people. Because when we think about what advisory boards are doing early on, they're kind of filling in some of the gaps where you might normally hire full-time professionals, right? And so you want to think of it as a little bit of a puzzle or a matrix of,
Mm.
what are the key components that I need around me to make me smarter, more credible, more, able to get into the doors that I need to. And that's where I think very proactive kind of outreach is a great opportunity to connect with advisors as well. And that's a little bit different than having somebody who's doing consulting work for you or fractional work, where I definitely want to see a referral coming through.
And often founders think they need to hire a certain position. And that's where advisors like you come in, where they say, I need to hire this. I need to hire a sales rep because I need more sales. Like, do you really? Type thing. Those are the conversations that we have. Let me throw something out at you, and I love to bat this back and forth.
Yeah.
I tell early stage founders, as soon as you are able to, don't go hire that chief engineer, don't hire that, sales manager who says, I'm going to create the whole strategy and set up the whole department. One of the first hires that I recommend is an executive assistant to the founders, the core team, just to extend their time. The cost will also extend the runway. And that sometimes creates much more productivity, especially if that executive assistant, mine, I taught her how to use AI tools. I set up agents and I said, just run these agents, supervise them. And so now I get a 10x productivity out of that. That's what I recommend at early stages, especially if you get a little bit of funding. How about you?
Yeah, I think, it's a great suggestion. I think I would always take that step back and say, okay, what over the next 3 to 6, 9, 12 months? Don't get further out than a year, right? Like, and even then, I'd really love to stay 3 to 6 months. What are we trying to achieve over these next few months? And
So
what
good.
are the skills that I need in order to achieve that? And obviously, as the founder, you can't do all of it yourself. And so, where do you need to spend your time? And then where can you be augmented, whether it's with an EA that could maybe take some of that off your plate or, leveraging some of those AI tools. The one thing I will say is I'd like somebody that can stretch beyond just administrative work, though. I
Mm.
want to make sure that they're able to support you and support the business and some other, foundational things around, doing some pipeline development, thinking about customer success, right? I think some of those core operational areas are really important too. So again, I'm all about hiring an athlete early on, meaning somebody that can wear a lot of different hats,
Nice.
that is very comfortable in that. And what does that role look like then over time? It will depend, right? I mean, they're probably not going to necessarily stay in that role as the company scales and grows, but you'll figure that out because you know you need different types of talent as the company is scaling. So, yes, I agree in certain areas, but I also think it's always about taking that step back and seeing where those gaps exist, where you as founder need to spend your time and where you are better off having somebody support you to create efficiency.
And everybody, you're now seeing the advantage of speaking to an advisor that specializes in this particular thing versus just like a generalist like me. I just kind of pontificate and throw out my ideas all the time. Let's move to seed then. Okay,
Okay.
let me set it
Yep.
up. So then pre-seed, it's kind of like, is this idea going to work?
Yep.
And you start to get a little bit of traction, get validation. Seed round, when you're there, you've got signs of product market fit. Maybe you got a path to profitability. Things are clicking together. You're making money, and it kind of becomes serious. And investors, if you're going to raise funding, want you to be able to get that product market fit and continue on the hypergrowth trajectory for startups. How does the thinking change for a seed founder when it comes to hiring?
I think here it's really about, are you starting to build a function versus executing in that function? So,
Interesting. Okay.
right, like this is where you need to start to think about some repetition, some scale. We'll talk about that a little more when we get to Series A. But
Hmm.
at this stage, I want to understand, are you building something or are you executing in that function? Because if you still don't have things that are fully flushed out, if you're still kind of figuring things out, you don't want to overhire against that, right? Because you don't want to bring in somebody that is going to be all about, putting in all these systems and processes and you're not quite there yet. So I think it's a little bit of that balance of, am I building this or am I executing in it? Because you're still early enough. Maybe you have a little bit of product market fit, but there's still some ambiguity there. There's still some figuring out to think through. And again, I think this is where AI can be leveraged in a big, big way.
So then sometimes what happens, and I've experienced this, when I'm at that seed stage, I have people who want to come in and they all want to work on strategy. I want to be able to input in a product development and they come up with these big ideas, which is great. And I understand the reason they want to do that. But then they don't have the same commitment to just sheer execution. I hate
Yeah.
to say it, but I've hired MBA students, and the first day I go, how'd it go? And they say, well, I coded this AI agent for you and I worked on this policy and I created this strategic document. And I tell them, I think we're on the wrong page here because your job description says you're going to answer these emails, you're going to do some customer service, or you're going to make some calls. And there's this disconnect. And I find that that's something that founders really have to guard against in terms of bringing on that functional person versus someone who wants to be strategic. What's your thoughts on that?
We don't need strategy. You, as the founder or co-founding team, you own the strategy, right? So you're absolutely right. And that's where you need people who are going to come in and do. And you can still at this stage have a combination of maybe some full-time hires. Maybe you've gotten to a place where, there is repetition and you do need to have somebody that is working on a full-time basis on something for you. But other areas can probably be leveraged again by consultants and fractionals. The one thing I will caution though, sometimes with fractionals is that a lot of fractionals want to focus at the strategic level, right? That's what they're used to. Because when people ask me the difference between a fractional and a consultant, when I think about the experience that somebody has typically to call themselves a fractional, it's in a very specific subject matter area, right? So, well, let's just call it a fractional CMO.
Right.
So you bring in a fractional CMO, usually their primary focus is going to be helping you develop that marketing strategy. My question is, how hands-on are they going to be in terms of the execution of that marketing strategy, right? You need to make sure you've got that balance there. So that's where I think at this stage, if you've got somebody on your team or you as the founder have that strategic plan in place, you just need really good execution because right now it's about testing, right? And you need to be able to make quick decisions. And again, if you've got too many senior people and too many people thinking strategically and not doing, you're not going to be able to respond to what the market is sharing.
As I've had conversations with unicorn CEOs and other large enterprise, very, multi-billion dollar companies, one of the regular prevailing piece of advice they give me, hire slow, fire very, very quick at those stages. Does that still apply to us as startup founders?
100%. I think that again, people are quick because talent is something that is often reactive. Somebody leaves, we've got to refill the position. My investor told me, my advisor told me, I need to go do this. Take a breath, really think again.
Yes.
Why am I making this hire? Why is this important? Where is it going to move the needle for us over the next 3 to 6 months, particularly these early stages? That is really important. And there are also ways to get to know people. You could start off with somebody who might end up as a full-time employee. Maybe they start off as a contractor for you. That's a great way to get to know somebody. It's a great way to get them engaged and involved in the business. And then maybe over time, as the business grows and scales and it's appropriate, you can bring them in on a full-time basis. But yes, I think most of the time there's a real quick reaction to talent as opposed to taking a step back and really making sure that it's aligning to those business goals.
I'm experiencing PTSD during this conversation because I've made all those mistakes. I'm sure you've seen them all. For the sake of time, let's quickly touch on just the shift for Series A. What
Yeah.
happens?
Yeah. So Series A, now we're starting to really scale and we've got repeatability, right? So this is going to look very different as we start to get to a talent perspective, right? So maybe some of those sort of scrappy generalists that you had early on, they need to start to be put into a swim lane, right? They need to find what they're going to be focused on. They can't just continue to do a little bit of everything. And that also may mean, transitioning people out who aren't ready for this phase of growth. And that is
Hmm.
okay. Again, I can't emphasize enough. You need different types of talent as a company is scaling and growing. But again, what you now really want to think about is ensuring that you've got the right leadership in place around each of the functional areas that are going to help move the business forward. Now, with that being said, those leaders still need to be very comfortable being in the weeds. I don't want individuals that, again, just want to do strategy. Series A is still relatively early in the scheme of where a company is going and
So true.
growing.
Right.
And so, again, you definitely need to start thinking about more experienced professionals to be coming on board. But I like to bring in people that have been there and done it before. They know what it's like to come into a Series A stage company. They understand what it's going to take. They know there's still a level of scrappiness that's there. They're not suddenly going to hire 5 people underneath them. They're going to be setting the systems. They're going to be building the processes. They're going to be building out the playbooks in whatever function that is. And then over time, they'll start to build out a team. So you definitely want experience, but you still need a little bit of scrappiness in there as well.
I love how you've broken it apart and that you actually mentioned, because I didn't even think about it till this conversation. There are individuals who specialize in those different stages of being employees.
Definitely. Oh, definitely. Yeah, it's something that I've done throughout my career. I mean, again, I look for people who have a track record of scaling from where a company may be today to where it wants to go to, and then going out and recruiting those individuals to be part of that team. So we want to think about operators at this stage, but we want to think about stage appropriate operators, not individuals that have come from very large organizations, very large teams managing a function. We want individuals who understand what this looks like and what they're walking into.
I have so many more questions, but we don't have all the time to do it. I promise everybody out there, especially those of you at Spark Labs, I will twist Kailah's rubber arm to come back and we'll talk about, the later stages.
Yeah.
The last thing I just want to give a shout out to you and let you give an invitation for anybody who's watching this, not just at Spark Labs, but anybody in my network. How can they reach you? How should they reach you? Who are you looking to work with? Give us a little bit of an invitation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you. And thank you for having me as part of your conversation today, Ed. And I'm happy to continue it. Yes, always enjoy chatting with individuals, whether it be people that are looking to join companies at this stage, founders that are building and scaling. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I know Ed shared my full name, so I'm easily reachable on LinkedIn. That's a great way to get a hold of me, but would love to work with founders that are scaling and growing who might need some talent support, maybe some executive search, planning, development of their talent roadmaps. And then for anybody that's looking for advisory work, I'm always happy to chat with individuals as well.